Olá, sejam muito bem-vindos. E as aulas vão ser, as aulas estão sendo gravadas e vão ser postadas no YouTube para todos. E vocês vão poder assisti-las em inglês, francês e português. Espanhol. Vocês podem ouvir essa aula em qualquer língua. Então, vocês só vão precisar clicar no emoji global para escolherem o seu idioma. Então, temos pessoas de 20 países da África e 21 de outros países. Então, muitas pessoas aqui nessa aula estão na África e nos outros lugares do mundo. Hoje é a aula número 7 e vamos falar sobre capitalismo global e os caminhos para a África. Então, quem vai falar hoje vai ser a Mana, e ela tem dado aula por 24 anos. É uma ativista que acredita que a sociedade ainda pode ser mudada e está no meio aí. Namaskar, por favor, comece. Namaskar. Muito obrigada pela introdução. Obrigada pelo time por organizar. E eu gostaria de compartilhar a tela. Então, ele vai compartilhar a tela agora.
It's all right, but can you put it into slide show mode?
Okay. All right, for anyone interested, here is some contact information for me. There's also the proudglobe.org website.
Então, esse é o
reach me on the email
se alguém quiser falar com ele, pode acessar esse e-mail pelo número do WhatsApp e por esse site. Então, hoje vamos falar sobre o capitalismo global e caminhos para a África.
I've had extremely little contact other than in the north of Africa, in Egypt, where I do
ele teve contato com o norte da África e o Egito com o trabalho dele.
I am, educated on the principles and teachings of progressive utilization theory. So this is an effort to use that framework to give an analysis, firstly, of the state of capitalist globalization in the world, and a future beyond that we've here articulated as universal family.
Então, vamos falar sobre a família universal. E ele perguntou se precisa pausar para tradução.
Hello?
You're going fine.
So I don't have to stop for translation, is that right?
No, just go slowly, and that would be
slowly.
Perfect.
Okay.
It would be perfect if you talk slowly. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I hope that people can take something of use and value from the presentation.
Então, espero que as pessoas possam tirar coisas de valor dessa apresentação.
So this is my effort at mapping out a broad historical framework Of course,
Essa
there was a very long pre-colonial. Sorry?
Dada, excuse me. Probably it's best if you pause after each sentence.
Oi,
Just a little bit. Because it's so easy to talk quickly.
Okay, thank you, Dada.
Maishoranji, it seems the translation in Portuguese coming from the English side, and his speech in Portuguese coming in English coming on the Portuguese side. Just if you can inform.
I'm sorry, what are you saying?
The translation in Portuguese is coming in the English side. When you open the English, you hear in Portuguese. And when you listen to Dada, you hear him from the Portuguese side. Speaking
Amitabha, it says English to Spanish. Victoria, it says English to Portuguese. I don't understand the problem, Dada.
Okay then.
It says Guruvati, English to French. Dada?
Okay, carrying on.
Okay.
Of course, there's a very long... So there's a very long pre-colonial history that the African people and nations have. And then, of course, there's a very brutal period of colonial history. And that's, we could talk a long time just about that and, the origins of that chapter in human history.
Então, vamos falar sobre os capítulos.
And we're not going to get the chance to do that, but obviously it's important to
colonial do mundo,
place the contemporary moment in that broader colonial framework, because the impact is obviously still present.
Isso ainda está
and
presente.
From that colonial history, it then passed on into a neo-colonial history, which we're hearing a lot about today, literally in these past weeks with the events in Niger. And then there is what we may call a post-colonial history
Então, essa
that we
semana
might
nós vamos ouvir
distinguish
muito
from a
sobre
neo-colonial history.
a história colonial.
And that post-colonial path of development has, from what I can see,
Então,
orientated around a
o que ele pode
capitalist
ver
model of development
de modo de
or a
desenvolvimento do
state
capitalismo
capitalist model of development in the
ou
case of several African nations.
desenvolvimento do capitalismo
I think
foi
Ghana was
influenciado por
one
isso.
example, and Algeria another, where it was a type of African socialist experiment
Ela foi
with the state
socialista
having considerable ownership
muitas coisas.
of industries.
E
And
ajudou
then
a
the question mark there is representing the future. Where do we go from here? What are the options for
Então, quais
Africa as it moves into the future?
para mover para o futuro?
Okay.
Tá bom?
In terms of the post-colonial history,
Então, com a
the
história da
1960s and 70s were important times in
época colonial.
that period, this period of independence, either in a neo-colonialist
Nesse período foi
framework
período
or in this
de
post-colonial framework,
e depois da
characterized by
colônia foi
initial social and
período de
economic
independência
development following
e
independence.
desenvolvimento econômico.
Of course, heavy borrowing and what was referred to as the import substitution industrialization, ISI, where
Então, eles
many
evoluíram muito
nations
depois dessa época colonial
opted to
para
industrialize in the
os
areas
industrializados ao
of
redor
what
do
they
mundo.
had been importing, those especially essential things. So that was an effort to produce locally what was previously being imported.
Então, eles começaram a trabalhar com o que estava sendo escrito pelos outros países.
And then, of course, the participation of the International Monetary Fund and their structural adjustment programs. Often,
todos os programas do
what we
mundo
call conditionality, in order to
ajudaram
get those loans, various policies had to be implemented, such as removal of food subsidies, liberalization of trade,
muitas coisas
enforcing a balanced budget,
exibidas
and
e
a freeze on wage increases. And
comida,
the outcome of this
porção de
was
comida
often
foi
to increase
uma das coisas
unemployment,
que
a
aconteceu,
rural
a
exodus to the cities,
de
and
troca,
indeed a fall in
o
living standards.
balanceamento e muitas coisas acabaram
In
prejudicando.
terms of the International Monetary Fund's role and the World Bank, they were two institutions that are sometimes
Então,
referred to as
depois disso,
Bretton
tiveram
Woods
duas instituições.
institutions. And Bretton Woods was a conference of many
Bretton
nations
Woods
in
foi uma conferência de
1944 at
muitas
the end of the
nações
war,
em
World War II, and it
1944,
was really setting up
durante
a
a
new
Segunda Guerra
global
Mundial,
financial
e participou do
system.
financiamento do mundo
And
naquele tempo.
these two institutions, of course,
E as
went on
duas
to play
instituições,
major
claro,
roles in Africa. There's
participaram
various other
do papéis da
initiatives,
África,
the
tiveram
New
muitos
Partnership
papéis
for
na África.
Africa's Development, referred to as NEPAD, characterized by a market economy, emphasizing the sort of
Então,
capitalist free
Bretton
market
Woods,
economy
ela
and a
foi uma
neoliberal
parceria para
approach.
o desenvolvimento
Contrasting
da
against
África
that, the
e
United Nations
o
Economic
mercado da
Commission for
economia.
Africa seemed to emphasize more industrialization and a greater role of
E
the state.
a
So these were two sort
Nações
of
Unidas,
contrasting
a Comissão Econômica das Nações
outside
Unidas para a
approaches.
África foi
One was this more
o que
neoliberal, and the other was
teve mais
this
destaque na
increased
industrialização
role of the
do
state.
Estado.
Okay, I think I'm going to jump that.
Okay. I do man. I can.
So we had the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and on this other side, we had the
Então,
United Nations Economic
nesse
Commission for
lado,
Africa.
nós tivemos a Comissão
And
Econômica
that was the one emphasizing the greater role of the state
das
industrialization
Nações
and was
Unidas
picked
da
up by
África
Ghana and Algeria particularly.
e foi
There
pego
were
por
various other
Ghana e
initiatives
outros países. E
launched,
tiveram muitas outras
COMESA, the
iniciativas
Common Market of Eastern and Southern Africa.
no sul e do
You
oeste
can
da
see
África.
on this
Vocês
graphic
podem
here,
ver
extending
nesse
from
gráfico,
north as far south as
começando do
Zimbabwe and
norte
Madagascar.
e do sudeste e Madagascar da África. Foi onde
Much more recent, in
ONGs,
fact, within the last
organizações agiram.
month actually, there was the Russia-African Summit in St. Petersburg. I think many people will be familiar with that.
Então,
And that was
passado
another effort
tivemos
at
evento da
addressing
Rússia da África, segundo evento,
Pan-African development
que
around
fala sobre o
industry,
desenvolvimento
infrastructure,
da
engineering,
indústria
agriculture.
na África.
In relation to that, Africa has a
Em
huge
relação a
trade
isso, a
imbalance
África
with
teve
Russia.
uma grande
They
mudança
import 5 times more than
em
what
relação à
they
Rússia.
export to Russia. So
E
that's a
eles
major
têm
trade imbalance.
importado muito mais do que tinham exportado para a Rússia.
Positive news, you may
E
not have heard of this,
muitas
but there was a write-down of
novas
the debt
notícias.
to Russia
Teve uma onda
up to as
baixa
high as
para
$23
a Rússia.
billion.
E isso valeu 20
Interestingly,
bilhões de
not
dólares.
much reported in the mainstream media, at least in the Western
Então, isso foi
countries.
no
Okay, so
norte
that's sort of
e no
just a very broad
e no
overview
estado.
of some of these initiatives that have been launched for the development of Africa and its economies.
Então, isso foi muito importante para a África
And we're going
e
to
a
contrast that
economia.
with some other ideas in a minute.
Então,
However, I'd like now to move into just giving
agora ele
a
gostaria de
picture of
mudar
what
para
I see to be the status
um pensamento dele, o que
capitalist
ele vê
globalization
que é
today.
o
So we're going to just take
capitalismo
a
global
few
hoje.
minutes to look at what this
Então, ele quer que vocês pausem alguns
capitalist
minutos
project
só
of
para
globalization has arrived
ele
at
pensar
today and possibly
que é
where
o
it may
capitalismo
be
global
heading.
hoje em dia.
So here's a
Então, aqui
rally.
está
There's a big
uma
sign there: capitalism isn't working.
grande cartaz
Democracy is
falando
an
que o
illusion.
capitalismo não está
And I
funcionando
think this
e que a
somehow
democracia é uma
indicates some
ilusão.
of the crises facing
Então, uma das
global
crises que
capitalism
a
and
África está
particularly the
enfrentando
Western-led capitalist system.
é esse sistema capitalista.
Here's a quotation from Chris Hedges. He's a
Então, aqui está
Pulitzer
uma frase
Prize-winning journalist
dele,
and author.
e
And
ele fala que
he's making
agora
this
nós vivemos em uma
comment in
nação
relation to the
onde
state of the United States of
doutores
America.
destroem a saúde,
So, quote, we now live in a nation where
advogados
doctors destroy
destroem a
health,
justiça, as universidades destroem
lawyers
o
destroy
conhecimento,
justice,
o governo destrói a liberdade,
universities destroy
a
knowledge,
pressão destrói a informação, a
governments
religião
destroy
destrói as
freedom,
morais e os bancos
the press
destroem
destroys
a
information,
economia.
religion destroys morals, and our banks destroy the economy. I think this is more than just a comment on the United States. I
Ele
think it's
acha
a
que
comment
isso
on
é
many Western
comentário além dos Estados
capitalist
Unidos, mas
nations.
é
And
comentário
it
para o
shows
mundo todo do capitalismo.
the depth of the
Isso
emerging
mostra que
crisis in
as
the
crises
capitalist
no
nations. This is a
capitalismo,
pretty damning indictment of
isso
the
é
socioeconomic system
uma coisa bem clara
of
que a gente pode ver
capitalism.
no nosso sistema capitalista.
Here is a quotation from a former US National Security Advisor.
Então, aqui está uma frase de
The
servidor
technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more
dos Estados
controlled
Unidos. E ele dizia
society.
que a tecnologia
Such a
envolve
society will be dominated by an elite,
o controle da sociedade. E a sociedade
unrestrained
vai
by
ser
traditional
dominada,
values.
iria ser dominada como uma elite.
Soon it will be possible to assert
E
almost continuous
tem a possibilidade
surveillance
de perder alguns
over
valores.
every citizen. And I think this
E
quotation gives
provavelmente
another
vai começar
perspective of what's
a
going
continuar
on in
a
Western
ser
capitalism.
soberana sobre cada uma
So
das
it's here
pessoas.
emphasizing the surveillance society. And that's definitely something we in the Western countries are living with constantly, whether it's
Coisa
online
que a
or
gente está
walking
vendo
down the street.
nos países no este do
Surveillance
planeta Terra,
is a daily reality.
que essa soberania é uma triste
This is
realidade.
a quotation from a leader, Yanis Varoufakis.
E
Some of
essa é
you
uma
may
frase
know him
do líder
as
que
the
provavelmente
previous finance minister of Greece.
ele é um ministro na Grécia.
Quote, we have an
Ele
oligarchy
fala:
with elections
nós
and the
temos
elections
uma
are bought
oligarquia com
by
as
the
eleições
oligarchy.
que estão sendo compradas
Oligarchies meaning
por
rule by the few, rule
oligarquias.
by
E
elites.
isso, oligarquia quer dizer que são
And he's of course
nobres
talking
e
about
comprados
the
por
advanced capitalist nations and
ele está
making the
falando
claim they are
sobre,
ruled by an oligarchy, a small
basicamente,
elite.
O mundo está sendo governado por uma elite pequena,
and that
mas
elite
muito rica ao
buys the
mesmo tempo.
elections, and
E que
thereby
essa elite
democracy
compra a
is being
democracia
completely
e os
undermined.
nossos líderes. Então, basicamente, eles nos governam e
He's the
nos
author
lideram.
of a book titled Techno-Feudalism. In his analysis, advanced capitalism,
Então, o pensamento
which is
dele
what is
também é que
driving
do
capitalist
tecnofeudalismo
globalization, can be described as techno-feudal in its nature. And again,
e
feudalism,
define a natureza disso.
the pre-capitalist system that dominated many parts of the world,
Como o sistema
where again a
capitalista
very
e
small elite
elites estão dominando
with
partes do mundo,
clerics
grande
in
parte
the
do
form
mundo.
of priests and religions dominating as a small elite, or kings and monarchs. And then
E
the
também algumas
remainder of the
religiões estão
society
dominando como as
were really serfs.
pequenas elites e a
There was, of
monarquia
course,
também.
nobility there as a sort of interface between the oligarchy at the top and the serfs at the bottom. And of course, serfs didn't own
Ele quer
anything.
que a gente entenda que essa
So
oligarquia está
he's making this comment about advanced
na elite,
capitalism. It's actually
mas
moving towards a feudalist
muito
system
poderosos e que
that
estão
is
movendo desse
supported by
capitalista
technology.
para
And we remember again that
uma
quotation earlier
digitalista.
of the technotronic era and the surveillance society. Okay, so this is, again, giving a viewpoint about what is the state of the
Então, isso aqui
so-called
está
advanced
e dando um ponto de vista
capitalist nations today.
o que está acontecendo hoje, que estava escrito o que
From
matou o
the
capitalismo.
Guardian in the UK newspaper,
Então,
2018,
e um
richest
jornal
1% on target to own 2/3 of
nas Nações
all wealth by
Unidas
2030.
do Reino Unido diz que
Absolutely mind-boggling. So as we look at the enormous concentration of wealth into a tiny
1% das riquezas
number of
do
hands,
mercado
a tiny portion of the
são
world population.
ocupadas em pequenas partes da população do mundo. Então, o que ele está querendo dizer é
And
que tem
this
muitas pessoas
apparatus or this oligarchy, this
quando tem
elite that
poucas
is
pessoas com
behind the
muitas
movement
pessoas
towards a highly controlled society in the advanced form of capitalism works through a number of organizations and institutions. One is, of course, finance,
Então, aqui estão algumas
and particularly
instituições
international
que
finance, and particularly
trabalham
the
no
practice
capitalismo.
of
Então,
lending
aqui
money
nós
to
temos
nations,
finanças,
very often
inteligência,
where those nations will be
militarismo,
completely
a
incapable of paying
indústria,
back those
ah,
loans.
pequenas
So
organizações
control
aqui,
of finance and ultimately
o
world finance.
governo
Intelligence is
e
referring to
transacionais,
intelligence agencies,
indústrias
the intelligence
transacionais.
apparatus, and the role again of controlling the society, surveilling the population.
A sociedade e que,
And of course, the military is there. The
claro,
military is there enforcing
os
the,
militares estão lá forçando,
let's say, this
vamos dizer
approach
assim,
to social management. Industry, the controlling of
uma
industry,
melhor,
of course, through the
de
form
acordo com
of
ele, de
transnational
controlar as
corporations.
coisas.
So that is definitely an ongoing trend where industry in our local nations are increasingly controlled through transnational corporations. The
Então,
governmental
muitas
apparatus
pessoas e muitas indústrias estão sendo
comment
controladas
earlier
por essas
was
empresas
that
transacionais, indústrias
elections
transacionais.
of governments
E o governo,
have now
claro,
been compromised, where the financial class is able to use their financial resources to influence the outcome of elections, and therefore
Agora ele está
who we
explicando que
get
o
as
governo, o
governments.
capitalismo, está sendo influenciado
Transnationals
por
are
essas
there again,
pequenas elites que ele
transnational
comentou.
corporations,
Essas
and
pequenas
then
elites eles estão
organizations,
manipulando o
and these
governo,
include the big
estão
foundations,
investindo no governo.
often presented as philanthropic foundations of literally of billionaires or of dynastic families, and a multitude of other organizations that all connect in that inner point of this circle, representing the interests of international capital and the financial elite.
Isso significa
at the center
está
of that.
acontecendo hoje no capitalismo global. As
This is
coisas
a
que controlam
diagram
o
that
capitalismo hoje. Isso aqui é uma
gives an
pirâmide
analysis of what's
e
happening
nos dá uma análise do que está
in terms of
acontecendo
globalization,
em
whereby
termos de
at the top
globalização.
portion of this diagram we have these elites, we have these
E
oligarchies,
no
the
topo,
financial elites.
nós temos essas
We
elites
have the fraternities
financeiras,
that they meet
essas
and work
fraternidades
through.
que
And then
trabalham
beneath
por
that,
isso.
there is a layer there, if you can see the diagram, it's titled World Financial Control. And we see these different bodies there, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, two Bretton Woods institutions. And these
Então,
big
aqui a
central
gente
banks.
pode ver na parte mais baixa, onde
And
no
they're
meio da
there
pirâmide
controlling tax
está
revenue,
o
central
controle
banks,
financeiro do
interest
mundo.
revenues,
E nós
and
temos
this
vários bancos
central bank of central banks,
e bancos centrais
known as the
que
Bank of
no
International
meio da pirâmide.
Settlements. So there's this layer of world
Então, essa
financial
camada do
control.
mundo está sendo controlada pelos bancos.
Beneath that, there is another
E
layer
embaixo
here, and
disso,
it's
a gente
titled
tem uma outra
World
camada
Resource Control
e
Corporations.
que está escrita Cooperação de Controle e Pesquisas do Mundo. E a gente pode ver
So again, the
as coisas que a gente
corporation,
usa
which
no dia a
here
dia.
means transnational corporations, are the vehicle for the control of world resources.
Então, isso aqui é o que dá o
You can see the
caminho e o
names
que
of some of those
essas
corporations listed there.
cooperações no mundo hoje.
The next layer is titled
E
World
a outra
Population
camada
Control.
está dizendo controle da
And this
população do mundo.
includes
E isso
politics
inclui
and
política
governments.
e governo.
It includes the military, the police,
Isso inclui
courts,
os
and prisons.
militares, os prisioneiros, os
It
policiais, as
includes the
cortes.
mass media,
E
the
inclui
education system,
o sistema de educação e a mídia
and
internacional
religion.
e a
You
religião.
can say beliefs and religion.
Nós podemos dizer crenças
So
e
from this
religião.
perspective,
Então, dessa
it's
perspectiva,
categorizing all of population control.
está sendo categorizado todo o controle da população.
And right at the bottom, we have population resource labor units.
Então, bem
So
embaixo a
they're
gente está vendo, na
the
base da
labor
pirâmide,
force, the mass
o
of
que não
humanity.
é mesmo
So
acesso à
that's again
população,
giving state of where
unidades de
capitalist globalization has arrived at today. And it's a very, very disturbing
unidades de
picture
trabalho,
here
que é o que dá realmente base para essa pirâmide, que é o
of an
nascimento,
economic system
escola, trabalho,
very much
dívidas,
centered around control
esse retiramento,
of
e os ciclos
resources,
continuam.
control of finance, control of our world populations down to the nation-state level. And I think it's important for us to
E ele acha que é importante para nós, que é importante considerar esses tipos de interpretação.
Because
porque
it wakes up to the idea that
nos acorda, nos traz de volta
political,
a
social,
atenção
economic power remains in the hands
e
of
como
a financial or merchant or capitalist
o poder
elite,
do mundo
then
está na mão das
it's
elites.
likely that the movement will be towards entrenching the power of that elite or that super class.
E como o poder vai para a mão daquelas pessoas de super classe, as pessoas da elite.
Here is a picture of a politician, a South African politician, Julius Malema. I think many of you
Então
will
aqui
be
a foto
knowing this
de
person. Why I put
Julius
him here
Malema,
is
político
because
da
I
África,
think to a great
sul
extent
da
he
África.
understands what was going on
E ele
in
colocou
this
aqui porque ele acha
brief
importante falar
appraisal of the state
Julius,
of
porque para
advanced
ele esse
capitalism
homem
today.
sabia do que ele estava falando, e
And he's
sabia
made
realmente o que estava acontecendo.
a number of public statements that indicate he is actually aware of what's going on in this project of capitalist globalization.
E esse homem, Malema,
He
realmente
was
sabe o que está
he's
acontecendo
considered to be a
nesse
far left politician, a president of the
mundo
African National
capitalista que nós
Congress
estamos
Youth
vendo hoje.
League, leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters since 2013, and an MP in the National Assembly of
E
South
ele
Africa
foi líder
2014 till
da
22. However,
luta
if you listen to
libertação
some
econômica
of his
desde 2013.
public speeches and interviews,
Ele tem dado
and
muitas
he makes some very
entrevistas
disturbing
e ele
statements.
faz
And on
alguns
one
documentos bastante
particular
importantes
interview, he made the statement
e
that
uma entrevista
at the
particular,
moment we are not
ele disse que
considering
no momento
killing
que nós não
white
estamos
South
considerando
Africans.
mais os
And
sul-africanos,
I wanted to put that in there to indicate that simply because a politician may have a very deep and revealing analysis of what's going on in terms of the capitalist
então
system
muitas vezes
and
por causa
its
da política a
agenda in
gente
Africa,
fica pensando que está realmente
it doesn't
acontecendo
mean that
nesse
that
capitalismo
person
global.
would make a good leader, a
E por isso que
benevolent
essa
leader.
pessoa
And I just
faria
use him as
ótimo
one
líder,
small
porque ele sabia realmente o que estava
example.
acontecendo.
Now, what the status of the recent coup
Agora,
in Niger? Of course, it
o
was
que o
a
Estado
military coup.
militarismo,
Some people are calling it a revolution.
algumas pessoas chamam
But
revolução,
the mere fact that a group may succeed in taking political power, of course, it
o
doesn't mean that
feito que
is
essa
that
equipe possa
power will be used judiciously
pegar esse
for the
poder
welfare of the people.
e usar para o bem das
And
pessoas.
we will
Pegar esse poder que essas pessoas têm
address that
e fazer
issue
o bem para as pessoas.
in much more detail as we proceed. So the question that is meant to be doing, what is our real human purpose? And I hope you can see the connection between
Então,
that
eu
question
fico perguntando
and
qual
this
o
topic
nosso
of
propósito como
society,
humanos,
economy,
para
and
humanos.
the
O que a
liberation of
gente
human
devia estar
society.
fazendo?
Because if we genuinely want
Porque se a gente
a proper human
realmente
society, we've got
ter
to
uma
ask the question, what is
sociedade
our
humana,
actual
nós
purpose
devemos nos perguntar
as human
qual é
beings?
o propósito principal de ser seres humanos.
And from the perspective of
E da
yoga,
perspectiva
which is what
de
my
yoga,
background is,
só que o
the
background
answer to
dele
that question
do que ele
lies with the
trabalha.
word dharma. Dharma.
E
And
eles
the
trabalham
word
com a palavra
dharma
Dharma.
means the fundamental characteristic of an
E essa
object.
palavra diz significa característica fundamental de um objeto.
So we can talk about what is human dharma. A
Então
simple
a gente
example
pode
actually
falar
we often use is what is the
humano.
dharma of fire?
Então podemos colocar
The
esse Dharma,
dharma
por
of
exemplo, como
fire
um
is to
fogo.
burn.
O Dharma é como um
Characteristic
fogo.
is to burn.
E é para queimar. A
If it
característica dele é
doesn't
para
burn,
queimar.
it's not fire.
Então, se não queima,
We
não
then
é
ask the
fogo.
question, what is human dharma? What is human
Então,
purpose?
ele está perguntando
What are
o
the
que é
fundamental
o Dharma
characteristics
humano?
of human beings?
O que é o propósito dos
And again,
seres humanos?
drawing on this yogic perspective, we find it is
Então, falando dessa
quadridimensional. It
perspectiva
has
de
four
yoga,
aspects to it.
nós temos 4 aspectos para responder essa pergunta.
One, human beings want to expand their mind.
Então, ele que está
So
dizendo que
expansion,
os seres humanos querem
characteristic
expandir a mente
of
deles.
human beings. Two,
É nossa
flow.
característica como humanos.
Human beings want to come into a flow that is higher than their own ego, their
Então,
own
ele está
individual
falando agora
self. So it's this idea
sobre
of flow. Sometimes people today use the word zone, being
fluxo
in the
ou
zone.
zona, onde as pessoas querem
So we
sair
have this idea of
desse
flow,
fluxo, querem
bringing
ser
our
mais
mind
do que seu próprio
into
ego,
this
do que
higher
eles
flow,
estão
this
vivendo
universal flow.
nesse
Three, selfless
fluxo
service.
universal.
Human beings want to give selfless service, and they can give selfless service.
Então,
Four,
ele está dizendo agora que os seres
ultimately,
humanos querem
human
dar o
beings
serviço
want spiritual emancipation,
altruísta, mas muitas vezes não
to
conseguem.
become one
E o quarto é a
ultimately with the
emancipação
source from
espiritual,
which they come.
de onde a gente tira
These are
esse
considered to be the four
desejo de ser.
fundamental characteristics of human
Então,
beings.
essas tendem a ser as 4 características principais de um ser humano,
Drawing on the wisdom of the ancient mystics. They did
desenhando
not invent
desse mito
Dharma,
antigo.
they merely discovered
Eles
it.
não inventaram nem
Dharma
descobriram Dharma.
existed prior to human beings.
Então, esse Dharma existe
So we see
junto
again these
com os seres
four
humanos.
aspects of
Então,
Dharma.
aqui
Expansion
tem
of mind,
4
coming in this
aspectos
higher
de
flow,
Dharma.
selfless service, spiritual
Tem expansão da
emancipation.
mente, tem esse
And in
fluxo,
this way, human beings are able to develop themselves at the
e como
physical
os seres
level,
humanos estão
at the emotional
tão
level,
capazes
at the
de
mental
evoluir
level, and
seu
ultimately at the spiritual level, the level of our
espírito.
deepest
Eles podem evoluir
inner
espiritualmente,
pure
mentalmente,
state of consciousness.
emocionalmente e fisicamente.
So this is the answer to the question,
Então, essa é
what is human purpose? What are we here
a
for?
resposta para a
And if we can
pergunta:
answer that
qual é o
question,
propósito humano
then we have a
que
possibility
devemos fazer?
of creating a society that
Então,
is
se pensamos dessa
in
forma, a gente
line
tem uma
with
chance de
that
criar uma
deep
sociedade
human purpose.
e se baseia
If we can't
naquela
answer the question, what is human purpose?
qual é o
Then the
propósito
chance of
humano.
our
Então, se não podemos
creating a
responder essa
society
pergunta,
that fulfills that human purpose, of course, will be
a
very
tentativa
small.
de
So,
e
from this
a chance
viewpoint,
de criarmos uma
this
sociedade
part is very
que
important
tenha todas
to
essas
have
coisas é muito
clear
mínima.
understanding of what
Então, por
our
isso é
human
importante
purpose is,
termos uma
and then
noção do
using
que é
that
o
to
propósito
guide
do ser
how
humano.
we create a proper human society. So, we
Então,
had this pre-colonial phase
A gente
in
tem
African
esse
history. We had the colonial phase.
período
We
pré-colonial,
had
a
this
gente teve esse
neo-colonial phase,
período
which we're hearing
colonial,
about so
nós
much today,
tivemos
often
esse período
in relation to France.
neocolonial, que está mais
We had
relacionado à
this
França.
post-colonial
A gente teve essa
phase,
pós-colônia fase,
largely capitalist in its
naturalmente
nature, and
capitalista
occasionally state
e sua
capitalist
natureza,
in the
seu
case
estado de
of the
capitalismo,
African socialist type model that some
no
countries
modo
pursue.
socialista da África que era.
And then we come to a future possibility
Então,
of
a gente vem para uma
a
sociedade
very
futura,
different social and economic system, one that would be
sistema muito
cooperative led
diferente socialmente
and what
e
we call
economicamente.
a three-tier economy that would be self-sufficient with the guaranteed minimum requirements. And that's the system that advocates that, of course,
É
is
chamado
progressive utilization theory, or PROUT. So we're going to look a little bit at what PROUT will be
nível
and
3 de cooperatividade.
what this PROUTist
Cooperatividade.
model represents, what it
Agora ele vai falar sobre o
stands
que
for,
esse Prout modo
and
significa.
presenting that as another pathway of
E
development,
apresentando
as
esse
an important
novo caminho,
preferred pathway, in my opinion.
novo caminho.
And this is, of course, not restricted only to African socioeconomic
Isso não é só para, claro,
futures,
a
but
África,
literally
a economia,
globally.
o futuro da África,
Because
mas para
all
todo mundo.
countries today, to a greater or
É
lesser extent,
dinâmica
are
global.
at that capitalist or state capitalist level of development, have pursued the capitalist or state capitalist model of social and economic development, and created enormous problems, some of which we touched on earlier in that appraisal
Então, agora ele está
of
falando sobre como esse
capitalist globalization.
capitalismo criou muitos
So
problemas para a
let us
gente.
continue.
Falamos anteriormente como
I
militarismo,
want to touch on the social dynamics
e agora ele quer falar sobre as dinâmicas
of
sociais
the progressive utilization
de
theory, or
acordo
of
com
PROUT.
o
I'm just going to
progresso
explore briefly. I think this provides a fantastic model of analysis
E ele
for
acha que isso é fenômeno,
societies.
pensamento fenomenal para a sociedade.
According to PROUT,
Então, de acordo com a Prout,
human beings can be
os
divided
humanos,
into
seres
one of
humanos,
four
podem ser
social psychologies.
divididos
That
em
of the
desses
laborer,
4
the manual
psicológicos
laborer,
sociais.
that of the warrior, that of the
Temos os
intellectual,
soldados,
that
temos
of the
os
merchant.
intelectuais, temos os marchantes.
We may possess more than one of them, but generally one of those four predominates in any individual.
Geralmente nós podemos ter
And
desses,
it's not
mas
only
geralmente
individuals.
nós somos
The point
deles.
comes where 3 out of those 4
Esse preto é trabalhador.
social psychologies will
Então,
aggregate together, will form a collective in the society, and ultimately one of those 3 will come to dominate the society or rule the society.
Então, se juntarmos 3, desses 3 vai vir
Now,
para
those
dominar a
3 are
sociedade.
the warrior, the intellectual, and the
Então,
merchant.
desses, guerreiro, intelectual e marchante.
So we can analyze
Nós
human
podemos
history in
analisar
its
aqui a
totality
história da
and
humanidade
see that
em sua
any
totalidade.
particular
Podemos
part
ver
of
que
that human history was dominated by one of these 4 psychologies.
foi dominada por uma dessas
There was a
4.
very long period where the laborer psychology ruled the ancient human society.
Então,
We
o
may
trabalhador
assume that went on
dominou,
literally for hundreds of thousands of years.
nós podemos dizer,
And then we see the
1000
rise
anos atrás.
of a warrior class that eventually
Essa
rose and came to dominate the
sociedade
society.
guerreira, soldados, né, que dominaram a sociedade.
Eventually that phase lasted also a very long time in human
Então,
history,
muito tempo
where
atrás,
warriors were
onde
dominating the
os soldados
society. They were
estavam dominando a
warrior
sociedade,
societies.
essa sociedade guerreira.
And in a more recent phase of human history, there came the
Sim,
time where intellectuals rose
Uma parte mais
and
recente da
power
nossa
passed
história
from
é
warriors
onde
to intellectuals.
essa parte intelectual
And
dominou o mundo,
again,
quando
in
passou
the
dos
context
soldados
of
para os
modern
intelectuais.
human history, we see the transition from the society
Então,
dominated
na
by
sociedade
intellectuals,
moderna que nós estamos
in fact,
vivendo, a gente
usually in the
consegue
form of
ver
priests
a mudança de
and
guerreiros
religions.
para intelectuais.
And we finally saw power pass to the merchant social psychology. So this
Então, a
framework
gente
provides a
viu
very nice
recentemente
way
passar
of
para comerciante.
understanding
Não é marchante, é comerciante.
our human
Esse é
history.
amarelo.
And we can look at any particular country in terms of when these four groups ruled. And we may ask the question, indeed, which social psychology dominates today?
Então, nós podemos olhar os países e ver
In fact,
qual
we'll ask that question shortly.
tipologias sociais estão
So
dominando
this
os países
social
hoje.
cycle, as it's referred to,
Então, esse
has
ciclo
three parts to
social
it.
tem 3 partes.
There is the phase of development,
Então, tem aquela
the
fase de
rising of
desenvolvimento,
that society.
o
Let's
crescimento
say
daquela sociedade,
the rise of the warrior society.
vamos
It
dizer,
reaches a
o
point of
crescimento
pause
daqueles
in its
guerreiros
development,
da
and
sociedade
then it
guerreira.
goes into a phase of decline, of degeneration,
Então, vai para
of retardation,
uma sociedade que
characterized by
desce de
exploitation
degeneração.
of the mass of the society. And it's good, again, this provides a nice analytic tool to look again at any given society and to assess, are they in the benevolent phase, in the rising phase, are they at a pause point,
Então,
or indeed
podemos
are they in
ver
the phase
nessa
of
subida,
degeneration?
na fase benevolente, na pausa e na descida, que foi a parte da exploração.
Graphically, we may depict it as that. The rising phase is,
Então,
on
podemos
average,
ver
is beneficial to the society,
o crescimento da
is more
sociedade
positive than negative.
é mais
It's not to say
positivo
that it's
do
all
que
positive by any
negativo.
means, but the positives outweigh the
Mas,
negatives as that new social psychology or social order rises. And
então,
then when it
conforme essa
moves into pause and then finally into
psicologia social vai
retardation or
crescendo, é mais
degeneration,
positiva do que a
it has a
degeneração,
negative impact
é mais
on the
negativa
society and on the
na
welfare of the people of the society.
sociedade e na vida dessas pessoas.
This is representing the
Isso aqui está
dominance of
representando a
negative
dominação da
tendencies in the
negatividade
society, negative
do mundo,
forces,
da
negative
sociedade,
agendas, translated into negative policies of governments.
traduzidas para
Negative, or we may say
negatividades
misplaced
do
or
governo
ignorant
ou ignorante,
social and economic policies.
políticas socioeconômicas.
And here would
E aqui
represent
podemos ver
positive
a
innovations,
positividade
progressive
da
innovations in a society.
coisas novas,
It's not to say
positivas que
there
estão
aren't
acontecendo na
negatives. We
sociedade.
see here on the right side there are negative
Então, podemos ver no lado
aspects,
direito
but
que há
they're
negatividade.
outweighed by the positive. So that would correlate with this positive rising of the
Então,
society.
a gente pode relacionar isso com aquele renascimento e crescimento da sociedade.
So, according to the social dynamics
Então,
of
de
Prout
acordo com a
and the
dinâmica
social
social da
cycle,
praia,
societies pass from the warrior phase,
a sociedade
and
passou da fase
after
dos guerreiros, que
degeneration,
cresceu,
conditions get
da
created for
geração.
intellectuals, usually in the
Depois
form of
subiu
priests,
na do
to
intelectuais
rise in
e
influence
padres
and then
novamente.
form the society,
Depois, na
dominate the society.
degeneração de
They
novo.
inevitably pass into retardation or
Depois
degeneration.
sobe
And
de
out of
novo
that, the
nessa
conditions get
parte
created for the merchant social
comercial,
psychology to rise,
nessa tecnologia,
form the society, and
pensamento,
they inevitably also will go into the phase of degeneration.
e que
So this model of the social
provavelmente vai para
cycle
essa
is
fase
a
de degeneração.
powerful tool to understand the social dynamics of the societies,
Então,
both in the
quais são as
past
ferramentas para
and right
entendermos
now here in the
esses
present.
caminhos?
This particular person,
Essa pessoa em particular,
curiously, a hedge fund manager.
curiosamente,
In fact, the CEO or the founder of one of the world's biggest
fundador
hedge
do
funds, his name is Ray Dalio, has conceived of a similar
ele tem
model of
usado
cyclic development of societies.
ciclo similar
And
também
he
de
again
crescimento
talks
e
about the
crescimento da
rise of a
sociedade.
society.
E aqui ele fala do
This
crescimento da
point where it
sociedade,
reaches the top
esse
and
ponto
then the
que
phase of decline.
atingimos o topo
And
e
he's
depois nós
gone on
crescemos, que
to
é a degeneração.
list the points that he believes characterizes
Então,
these
ele marcou os pontos
respective
que ele
phases.
acredita marcar essas fases.
So the rising phase, this
Então,
benevolent phase, characterized by strong leadership,
nessa parte cinza,
inventiveness,
que é do crescimento,
education
ele
of
acha que
people,
começa no
strong culture,
no
good
entrando
resource
um grande
allocation,
líder, um líder
good
forte.
competitiveness. We may say
Depois
healthy
vamos para o
competitiveness
convite, para a educação, a cultura mais forte,
and strong income
os
growth.
bons acessos da localização,
In the top
depois
phase,
uma
we may call that the
competitividade
state of
saudável,
pause. We get, in his model, less productive, overextended. It's losing competitiveness and wealth gaps are being
e nessa
created.
parte do topo são quando as pessoas
And
estão
then the
menos
decline
produtivas,
phase,
quando estão perdendo competitividade, e nessa parte da
large
descida,
debts,
quando
the
temos grandes
printing of
dívidas,
money, of paper money, internal conflicts within the society.
temos muito papel em dinheiro,
Loss of reserve currency, that's in relation, let's say, to the country
conflitos
that holds
internos,
the world reserve currency,
temos
currently the US dollar, of course. Weak
quando temos
leadership
perda de
and
reservas,
ultimately civil war
e
and
na
revolution.
última, número 18,
And I was
quando
very
temos guerras civis
surprised
ou revoluções.
that a hedge fund manager, one of the great icons of the advanced capitalist system, has
Então,
actually
ele acha
conceived
que
of this model in a
é
manner that
interessante que
correlates
esse
very closely
homem,
with the
ele
Prout,
tenha
the Proutist analysis.
funcionado dessa forma, porque ele é um gerenciador de uma empresa
So
que
what we want to
constantemente
move
influencia o
towards from
capitalismo.
the Proutist perspective, as articulated by the Prout founder P.R. Sarkar. So Sarkar wanted that the phase of degeneration, of retardation,
Então, esse é o pensamento do Capital, que é
and
quando
that
eles querem
a
ter essa
new
fase
benevolent phase of positive development
essa fase
gets
positiva seja
initiated as quickly as
maior
possible.
e que
And
seja
once that new
o mais
phase, you can
rápido
see here
possível,
in the middle of
que
the
essa
diagram,
fase de
once that new phase of
exploração, de descida, eles querem que seja mais
social dynamics, it
vai
also
ter um
starts to
nó
decline
e
into
essa fase positiva.
retardation, again, shift the social cycle and minimize that phase of retardation and bring
E
in the
eles
new
querem
social
minimizar, né,
psychology.
essa fase de
So
degeneração.
that's the contrast to that
Então, esse é o
sort of
contraste
systolic flow
para
where there's
essa
just
parte
this
sistema,
ongoing rise and fall
nesse
of societies.
crescimento
This is an
e
upward movement
degeneramento
of
da sociedade.
society by moving through the social cycle, the successive phases of the social cycle.
Eles querem ver esse ciclo social se
So that's
desenvolvendo
where we want
melhor.
to get to. And
Então,
how are we going to get there?
é aqui que a
Well,
gente
we
quer.
are going to have to
Então,
introduce
a gente vai
another
conseguir
social
chegar lá.
psychology
Então, vamos ter
in
que
order to do that, in
criar
order
mais
to
uma
minimize
psicologia
the
social
phase of degeneration or
naquela fase
retardation
de
in the social cycle, to
degeneração,
minimize that and to bring in the next phase of the social cycle.
para
What is
trazer
that
na
fifth
outra
social
fase.
psychology that P.R. Sarkar
Então, o
advocates?
que é essa
And of course,
quinta fase que Sarkar
that
falou?
is the Sadvipra, sometimes
Então,
defined as spiritual revolutionaries. So we're going to look at
essa
this idea of
fase
Sadvipra
é
because
para
this
onde
alternative
vocês
path
acham, a
for
gente acha uma
the
conexão
social and
espiritual
economic development of human society
que tem o
actually
desenvolvimento da
requires
sociedade
this fifth social psychology, this fifth
para as coisas
social
que queremos
group.
que aconteçam,
So we're going to
precisamos
spend a
desse
little bit
Sadvipra.
of time now looking at Sadvipra.
Então, vamos tomar um tempo para olhar para Sadvipra.
Sadvipra, spiritual revolutionaries,
Então, Sadvipra, revoluções
possess the
espirituais.
qualities of all four classes:
Eles têm a
laborer, warrior,
qualidade de
intellectual
todas as
merchant.
classes, de trabalhador, de guerreiro, de
They are
intelectual,
spiritually
de
developed.
comerciante. Tem o desenvolvimento espiritual.
They have the willingness to sacrifice for the good of the whole society.
Eles têm a disposição de sacrificar para o bem da sociedade.
They have unshakable morality.
Eles têm uma moralidade assim inquebrável.
They fight exploitation
Eles
in all its
lutam
forms.
com a exploração, contra a exploração.
So this is P.R. Sarkar's
Então,
response to
isso é
the inevitable phase
o
of
que
retardation of
respondemos
the
para
social
aquela
cycle, the phase of
inevitável
decline,
descida
the phase
da
of
sociedade
degeneration.
na fase da degeneração.
We'll look further at that, but I'd like to ask the question.
Então, ele gostaria de
Now we
perguntar,
have this
em que
idea
fase
of
da
the
África,
social cycle.
em que
The
fase
question is, in
desse
what phase of the
ciclo
social
social
cycle is
está a
Africa?
África?
In what
Em que
phase
ciclo
of the social
desse
cycle is Africa? What sort of answer did we get regarding the question of which Varna might dominate in
So,
Africa?
you guys from...
Or
Vocês
is it
portugueses
varied
estão
across
me
different
ouvindo?
nations?
Sim, né?
So who?
Dada, you can maybe review what people said in the English.
Okay.
And in other languages, people can type in the chat, and that again, Ananda can translate for us.
Okay, so our group sort of looked at the impact that colonization had on it.
Yeah,
So
go ahead, Dada.
our group looked at the idea that, our group looked at the idea that the natural flow of the social cycle got interrupted and disturbed by colonization, and that maybe it was in a phase, at least in some nations, in the warrior era, and then the imperialist nations were in the merchant era and started to impose this merchant element into what previously may have been a warrior. So it's, yeah. And then there was also the idea that disgruntled intellectuals were also created in this history.
Então,
and that they
ele
are
está
also
dizendo que no
Okay, who
grupo
would
do
like to
inglês
speak
eles
next?
estavam pensando que tinham a fase dos guerreiros e agora
Who
estavam na
can
fase
speak on behalf of
do
their group? Oh, they're
Africana.
writing it in the chat, are they? Let's have a look.
The answers are not there in the chat.
Namaskar. So,
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
I can try to say what I heard a little bit. Some believe that
Então,
there
ele
is
está
some type
dizendo
of
que
transitions in the masses,
algumas pessoas estão
moving from
pensando que
Egyptian era towards
estão
intellectual era.
numa forma de
At the
desenvolvimento.
same time, some comments were made in some groups that
Então,
these changes are
alguns
taking
comentários
place
foram
little
feitos
differently
em
from country
grupos
to country.
de que podia mudar de país
From my
para
looking
país.
from outside and from the history of Africa, I know that in Africa there's many empires in the past which were highly developed and had passed through all these different areas where the priest classes, for example,
E
the
na
ruled
África tiveram muito
they say here when
desenvolvimento
intellectual era came.
devido
Kings of
a muitos
Africa
países, a
were
muitas
advised by the
fases
priests,
que eles passaram,
so they were not
nas
just
fases dos
some type
reis e
of
dos
pure
padres
era. So at
e
this
que eles
moment,
fizeram.
as you said, with colonization, we can
E
see
com a
this
fase da
capitalistic
colonização, a gente pode ver
colonialism,
esse
post-colonialism, which is also colonialism, has influenced
colonialismo e
clearly on the movements of
capitalismo.
Africa, and it has become those who rule the society are capitalists through militaries, through
E que podemos ver isso
intellectuals
pelo
taking power. Even when
militarismo
they take power, they
e
become
os
just
intelectuais
dictators.
tomando poder agora.
So you can say capitalism and militarism are in
E
league.
podemos esquecer que capitalismo é militarizar, né?
If somebody can
Os
say and maybe add on or contradict, it will be
outros.
nice to have different opinions. That is a
E
very
ele
good
acha
question
que
that
seria
I
legal
made.
que a gente falasse coisas também, que seria legal ter
Sim,
diferentes
Thank you.
opiniões.
isto é de balãozinho.
Vocês podem escrever no chat
Yeah,
também, se
Dada,
quiserem.
namaskar, Dada, Bishikaran, namaskar.
Namaskar.
Please, Dada, it may be a challenging question, but what are the criteria to identify a specific psychology in the social cycle?
Então, ele está perguntando como
Great
podemos
question.
identificar o desenvolvimento
Yeah, because I
nesse
think it's more
ciclo.
than just who ends up
Então,
holding
Dada
power.
acha
So
que
in the case
é
of
mais do que
a
poder.
warrior uprising that catches power,
Não é como
it
aquele
need not
guerreiro
represent that the actual
que
society has entered
pega
at
o
all
poder.
into a Catrian or warrior era. So what characterizes that era will be much deeper than just
Então,
who nominally holds power.
o
It'll be
que
at the
vai
feet level of the masses, at the
normalizar
cultural
aquela
level, at
época,
their
aquela
seats
era,
of
não vai ser só quem tem o poder. Não vai
what
ser
we
só a
call
maioria.
in our yoga philosophy, the prana dharma somehow would. So it's a much deeper thing than just who holds power or who catches power.
Então, é uma coisa muito mais importante do que só
And
aqueles que
that's
têm o
something
poder.
maybe we could look at another time, unless anyone wants to make a further comment on that point.
E isso é algo que a gente pode ver depois,
Shiva,
além de
can you speak?
se alguém tiver mais alguma uma dúvida ou algum comentário a mais?
Oui, allez-y.
Oui, tout à l'heure, dans notre groupe, on a essayé de discuter et j'ai émis mon point de vue. Si vous regardez même actuellement en Afrique, malgré les militaires qui prennent le pouvoir, là, c'est une réaction à quelque chose. C'est-à-dire que on voudrait passer d'une ère à une autre.
Alors, I'll translate for the speaker.
Donc,
Groove, on n'arrive pas à vous écouter ici. Moi, j'ai vu que tu traduisais là, mais tu traduisais pour les gens qui vous écoutaient en français.
oui.
So what he said is
Grouvat,
that despite the militaries in Africa today taking power, it doesn't mean necessarily that the era is Catrian, and it signals a desire to change from one era to another.
Então, eles estavam
je
falando
disais qu'en
que
fait,
eles
toutes les
pensam que o
prémices, nous sommes dans
militarismo
une ère
na
un
África
peu
não seja algo
d'opposition
que
entre
esteja,
la
ou seja,
psychologie
algo que
guerrière
esteja influenciando essa
et l'ère des
transição.
intellectuels. Donc, juste une période de transition. Parce que tout ce temps qu'on a vécu ici, pour la plupart des cas, on était forcé de faire de travaux qu'on ne voulait pas. En fait, c'était des militaires, l'esprit guerrier qui dominait. Maintenant, on est en train de réagir face à cette domination des guerriers. Nous voulons passer maintenant vers l'ère des intellectuels. C'est comme ça que nous voyons tout le temps, on parle de l'état des droits, on parle de beaucoup de choses. Donc, on veut se sortir de cette ère des guerriers. Voilà, ça c'est un peu mon point de vue.
So what he says that the changes which are seen now are clearly a tendency of moving from a Catrian era towards the intellectual era. But it's
Então,
not
o
yet
que ele disse
complete.
é que estamos
In
movendo
the,
na
in
África para uma
the
era
slogans, in the
intelectual.
speeches, people are speaking of a state based on law, state rule based on law. And so he believes is a change into this. I
Então,
wanted
ele
to say
acredita
something
que
to
essa é a
Ravi
mudança.
Shekaranji. When we decide which
E
values we
quando
believe in,
mudamos o
it
que
means that we have to see which is the dominating force behind those who are holding
e
power
nós
and who
precisamos
actually
ver
are
o
running
que é a
the
força
society.
dominante para ser dividida.
So I would say the capitalists are running Africa
Então,
through buying
ele
presidents
acha
and
que o
paying
capitalista
militaries,
está
and
correndo pela
maybe
África.
now a change is coming up. If it is really a change, as you put a question on the situation of Niger, we don't yet know what are these guys really, whether they are revolutionaries or they're just opportunists wearing a hat of revolutionary to get the masses. So still most leaders in Africa, those who were type of revolutionary were killed, and those who maintain power were allied with the colonialism type of mind.
Thank you, Darji. Great insight. Yeah.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, Javon. Yes, go ahead.
Ok. Oui.
Hi, Javon.
Moi, je voudrais. Ce que moi je vois, c'est-à-dire mon opinion est que les sociétés qu'on avait en Afrique avant l'arrivée des colons, ce n'est pas des grandes sociétés, c'est des petites. C'est vrai que dans le passé lointain, on avait des empires, et ces empires ont été c'est-à-dire fractionnalisés en petits groupes de sociétés aujourd'hui, jusqu'à l'arrivée des colons. Et quand les colons sont venus, ils nous ont colonisés. Donc, on n'avait pas de tendance comme ça réelle, tendance qui soit africaine, à proprement dit. Okay. Mais après, c'est-à-dire le départ des colons aussi, il n'y avait pas une société organisée jusqu'à présent. La preuve, c'est aucun pays africain n'a une une constitution digne, hein, d'une nation. On n'a pas de constitution qui intègre nos valeurs, nos intérêts en tant que peuple africain. Mais aujourd'hui, ce qu'on peut voir, nous sommes dans le cafouillage. Il n'y a pas quelqu'un où, c'est-à-dire, rassembler le peuple et puis établir une constitution qui lie tout le monde, hein, sous forme de nations. Donc, on n'a pas de nations. On n'a pas de nations, pas encore. Donc, il est difficile de déterminer quel genre de choses-là, c'est-à-dire quelle époque nous sommes dans le cycle social. C'est très, très difficile. C'est-à-dire, après le départ des colons, les gens qui ont pris le pouvoir, même si les militaires, ils deviennent capitalistes. Si les capitalistes, ils continuent à être plus capitalistes. Si les, etc., ouvriers, ils deviennent capitalistes. Vous voyez? Donc, tout est déterminé par l'argent. Aujourd'hui, on vit ce qui se passe dans certains pays, en Afrique de l'Ouest, par exemple, et Afrique centrale. Je pense que, bien, on souhaite que ces gens-là aient l'idée de création d'une nation, hein, digne de ce terme. Et donc, c'est une question très, très difficile. On n'a même pas encore commencé pour dire que on est. C'est difficile à déterminer.
Okay, I'll translate a little bit what you said a while ago to those who are in English. So what you said is that though that before is true, it is true that you had empires in the past in Africa, but before the arrival of colonization, those
So,
empires were dismantled.
obrigada
Some of
pela
them were dismantled,
que
you can say,
está
because
falando agora. Ele estava falando sobre o que aconteceu antes da colonização.
and it resisted from 1482 to the beginning of real colonization, 400 years of attempt to enter into that continent. But after that dismantlement and the colonization came,
E
there was
depois
no real
que a colonização veio,
Africa and little identity of nation. So the nationhood is something new, and the idea of a whole continent also is also new.
era algo novo para eles. Então,
During colonization,
durante a colonização,
in the same way, and after colonization, those leaders who came into power did not really even create constitutions which would define properly what
eles estão
is
falando sobre os líderes, que os líderes que vieram depois da colonização não tiveram constituições. Então, aconteceu muita coisa e não tinha claridade do que fazer na África. As pessoas estavam perdidas. E a era capitalista, então ele acha difícil definir o que é classes sociais nesse país, nesse continente, diferentes países.
Thank you very much, Dariji. That's great. Really good points made there. Dr. Maheshwarananda, would you like to make a comment?
We have time for questions and answers that will continue for another 30 minutes. Is there anything you'd like to say to conclude before we go to questions and answers?
Yeah, let me share the screen again. There's a few more concepts that
Nós
I'd
temos
like to bring in.
para perguntas e para respostas.
There is a question here of Guruvati asking, did the colonizers really leave the continent?
Alguém perguntou aqui se os colonizadores realmente deixaram o continente.
This is looking at a successful Sadvipra guided,
então,
we can
aqui estamos olhando
warrior-led society.
Uma sociedade guerreira.
And the green circle around the red warrior
Esse círculo Pirâmide ao redor dos guerreiros
is the idea that the Sadvipras, these spiritual
é a ideia de
revolutionaries,
que Sadvipra
are in
é
place
a relação social que
guiding
precisamos. É o
the
guia.
Kshatriya rulership. So the warriors here have got the guidance of the Sadvipras.
Então,
Okay, so
os
there's
guerreiros
that
aqui
one.
conseguiram ter essa guia
Just
do
for the sake
Sadvipra.
of theory, the same would happen if these Sadvipras were leading the transition from warrior to intellectual society.
Então, se o Sadvipra estivesse
So
guiando
here,
essa
the
mudança entre
Sadvipras
guerreiro e
are having
intelectual,
that influence on the
então,
rulership of the intellectual
Sadvipra teria essa
class.
influência no ciclo social
So this
intelectual.
is where we want to bring things to. That
Então, é para isso que a gente quer
the
trazer as
Varnas
coisas.
continue to move. The social cycle continues to move.
O
But the
ciclo
Sadvipras are
social
in place
continua a
to
mover,
see
mas
that the
Sadvipra
society
continua no lugar para provar que a
progresses,
sociedade
that moves positively,
prova,
benevolently for the welfare
para provar que a
of
sociedade
all
ela
in the society.
evolui e progride.
And theoretically, again, it's on future point where
E isso
the
aqui é o
transition
que queremos
goes
futuramente,
from
para quando
intellectual to merchant
quando o
society.
ciclo vai de
Again, where the
intelectual
Sadvipras
para
are in place,
comerciante.
then we get the benevolent merchant society.
E é quando a
And
gente
of
chega
course,
no nível
at the point at which that goes into
social benevolente,
decline, into retardation, degeneration, then those Sadvipras shift it to the next phase of the social cycle.
quando o Sadvipra iria
Okay, so there's
mudar
that
para a
concept which I
próxima.
think we're familiar with. This is simply another way of looking at it.
Então, isso aqui é simplesmente um outro modelo que a gente pode olhar para isso, que o Sadvipra está no meio.
Okay, these slides are really now talking about in the case that Africa really does have a merchant
Então,
elite.
isso aqui mostra a sociedade que a África tem,
Imperial
que tem
powers,
uma
if they put in place a
elite
merchant
comercial
class that
e
in
que
the
essa
post-colonial
classe
phase
comerciante
took up power, if that's really the case, then we have to assess at which phase in the social cycle
Então,
we
é como
are in
se eles
any given
pegassem o poder e a gente teria que acessar
nation of
esse
Africa.
poder para
And
dar para a nação
would
da
it
África.
necessarily be the case that it's in the phase of the degeneration where
E isso
intellectuals
não seria o caso se a
and
gente
warriors
estivesse
have been reduced to laborers also?
num período
So there's
de
that
degeneração.
concept there. And of course, whether disgruntled workers have been created. This, I think, very much applies to the much of the rest of the world. Certainly to the Western capitalist nations, where we really do have a very
Então,
emergent
seria
group of disgruntled workers. And I think
o
following
grupo
the
de
recent
trabalhadores
pandemic, that
desapontados,
group became bigger than ever.
esses intelectuais e os guerreiros no meio, os
And then we know the
trabalhadores no
dynamic
preto.
by which the social cycle shifts. It is the alliance between the intellectuals and the warriors.
E a gente quer chegar na parte que os intelectuais e os guerreiros,
Striking
eles
merchant
se
power.
juntam para mandar poder
We call that Shudra revolution.
e começam uma
In the
revolução.
case that a warrior class is exploiting the society,
E
then the dynamic of
caso dos
change
guerreiros
might be represented like this. It would be
tiverem
intellectual revolution, or rather
esse poder, né?
intellectual, it could be evolution also,
E
against
nessa
the warrior
fase,
class,
os
and the
intelectuais
possibility
poderiam
arises
ser
where the
revolução
society
contra
transitions
esse
to the
poder.
intellectual
E aí a
class.
sociedade ia
That
mudar
may
para
have
essa
been,
classe
for example,
intelectual.
I don't know if this is true, that may have been the
Eu não sei
pre-colonial
se
situation of
é
some
verdade,
nations of
mas
Africa.
Isso pode ser
in the case they were led by warrior societies, if those societies had gone into the retardation phase, degeneration phase, then the dynamic to shift that could be represented in this
por essa
way.
dinâmica do ciclo de degeneração e de crescimento.
Okay, so I think we can leave it at that, and let's go to the questions. So I'm going to
Então,
stop
acho que
sharing the
podemos
screen
deixar
and
por
let's
aqui e ir para as
open
perguntas.
it up to the questions. So,
E podemos abrir para as perguntas.
I see here, did the colonizers really leave Africa after independence?
Os colonizadores realmente deixaram a África depois da
In the
colonização?
light of recent events in
Na
West
luz
Africa,
dos
it's pretty clear that no, they didn't. In the case of
acontecimentos
a
recentes,
number of countries,
podemos ver que não,
and the ongoing presence
no
of
sul da
France
África
in some of those West African countries.
e
And
nos
in that
países
case,
da
maybe
África.
we would define that as actually a phase of neo-colonialism.
E seria uma fase de
Where the
neocolonialismo
financial
ali,
system, the monetary system
onde
continue to be controlled by the colonizing power.
a
And
sociedade
many other
continuaria
very
sendo
bizarre
controlada
conditions
pelos
imposed
colonizadores.
upon some of those nations. For example, the continued use of the French language, the use of the currency, the training of the
Podemos ver isso
military leaders
pelo
was to be done by the
pelo
colonizing power.
uso da língua
So
francesa, pelos líderes militares
this is not
sendo treinados.
independence.
Isso
I
não
think
é
that's what we would call
independência.
neocolonialism.
Eu acho que é isso que ele acha que isso é neocolonialismo.
Farther up, there are 5 questions from Paramashiva.
Oh, above.
You see them?
Above or below?
Above previously.
Oh dear.
What is the fundamental difference between globalization and universalism was the first question.
Okay. Well, the context that we speak about globalization is very different than the context we talk about universalism.
Então, o conceito de globalização que a gente falou é bem diferente do universalismo.
Relates
A
to
globalização está
the
ligada
late
com
phase of capitalism,
a fase
where it has
do
managed
capitalismo,
to
onde
open
tem
up
uma chance para abrir
markets globally and impose the trading regimes on a global scale.
onde eles
So at least one interpretation of globalization
oprimem
is
a
that.
sociedade globalmente.
And it's often happening through these unions, such as the European Union,
E
the
que está
African Union.
acontecendo
The
pela
North American Union is there with Canada, the US, and Mexico.
pelas sociedades
Through
maiores que
vehicles
temos.
like the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, but where the underlying driver is capitalism itself.
Então, a linha que se desenha
Agenda,
é
let's
o
say, of the
capitalismo
advanced
mesmo
capitalist class.
e as classes.
Universalism,
O
in the context that we would use it in Prout,
no contexto que iríamos usar na
is
Prout,
completely the opposite of that.
e é
It's a
completamente o
complete
oposto
different
disso.
concept,
É
where it's talking
contexto
about
diferente,
the oneness of all nations,
onde
oneness of
falamos
all
da
people,
igualdade
recognition of
de
the
todas as pessoas e de
existential
todas as
rights of all people, and not only human beings, indeed extending beyond that.
e
So
que
it's a
não seria
completely
só entre
different
seres
idea
humanos,
there.
mas uma
Dada, can you read the
sociedade
next question?
igualitária para todas as pessoas.
Yanananda, there are 2 questions in French from Jai Gopal and from Alma Gluchadan, but they're in French, so you need to translate them into the chat. The next question, and well, Japa puts out the points Some possible characteristics of rule by Varnas. For the warrior era, he says, one, personality and state organization. For intellectuals, you have belief, ideology, and social organization. And for the capitalist class, you have systems of exchange and economic organization.
Great. Thank you, Japa. That's great.
The next question was, is globalization a change of sentimental strategy by capitalists in order to operate more efficiently?
I think there are sentimental elements used to support the process of globalization. P.R. Sarkar talks about what he calls metamorphose sentimental strategies. And I think this is a very, very important concept today. It talks about the changing, the ever-changing sentiments or sentimental strategies used by the elites to
Então, agora ele está explicando
move
como a
towards their
mudança
objectives, the
dessa
realizing
saída
or
do poder da
materializing
elite
of
pode
their
ter,
objectives.
e do sentimentalismo
And that
poderia ter
relates
para
to
mudar isso.
globalization. For example,
Por exemplo,
climate change, I think there is definitely an argument to suggest that climate change has been used as a sentimental strategy, irrespective of whether indeed it's happening or it isn't.
então ele
It
está
has
falando
been
agora
packaged
que
as a sentimental
a
strategy
mudança de clima tem sido
to
usada como
support
uma
the idea of
estratégia sentimental
all sorts of regulations at a global level, which is to say, in support of globalization.
em suporte
And
da globalização.
ultimately of the idea of a world government.
E a ideia de
Now, world
governo
government
do mundo.
was very strongly supported in Prout and advocated by P.R. Sarkar. But it's nothing at all to do with the world government that is being
A Prout apoiava esse governo mundial, mas não tem nada a ver com o que está acontecendo hoje no governo e o governo que temos.
Dominated by a financial merchant elite, by an
Porque
oligarchy.
eles são dominados pelas
And various sentimental strategies are being used to lend support to that idea. But
então,
we have to be very,
ideias sentimentais estão sendo usadas para apoiar essa causa.
Advanced stage of degeneration of the social cycle, all manner of deceptions and manipulations of sentiments will
Todos
be
os tipos
used
de manipulação de sentimento vão ser usados para
advance the agenda of
avançar
the merchant oligarchy.
a
And what is that
oligarquia.
agenda today?
O que é essa
In
mudança
my
hoje?
opinion, it is nothing less than
Na
the
opinião
capturing
dele,
of the planet itself, the establishment of merchant
é o
elite rule
estabelecimento
on a global scale.
na
That is,
escala
to me, what the
global.
program of advanced capitalism is today.
Isso é para ele o que é o
Other people may have
programa
very different opinions on that. I accept that.
Globalização
But that's
capitalista.
the conclusion I have reached from the type of, research and analysis I've been engaged in. Can we?
Guru Charan, he asks, for Africa, the first step is to raise the awareness of the new generation. Even for the creation of a secular society, spirituality is a fundamental basis for awareness, especially in Africa. Otherwise, Africa will always have the same problems and will always remain the prey of the capitalists.
Well done. Perfectly said. Maybe go ahead, Dada.
The next question from Jaya Gopal: what does it take for Africa to have Sadvipras? And how do we know that this person is a Sadvipra?
Great question.
Alguém perguntou como poderíamos saber que uma pessoa é
question to be asked
Ah,
everywhere in the world.
essa pessoa. Então, Dada está falando uma pergunta aí que nós nos perguntar em cada lugar do mundo.
Sadvipra presence is essential.
E ele está dizendo que a Sadvipra é uma presença essencial e a única
for the ongoing development of the human species is the creation and presence of Sadvipras.
É a única maneira de a gente evoluir como sociedade.
And I think P.R. Sarkar gave many means and ways by which Sadvipras get created. And the previous comment was underlying the importance of spiritual education.
Então, ele está falando que uma coisa importante para a Sadvipra é que a gente deveria estar tendo educação espiritual, porque a fundação do Sadvipra é a moralidade. São os valores e tudo isso pode ser ensinado. A gente não precisa nós precisamos de alternativas sociais e econômicas que precisam ser Então, a conclusão que ele alcançou é que
our attention has to go towards the creation of Sadvipras as a key part of
nosso foco tem que ir em direção ao Sadvipra.
And let's meet together at our local levels.
E nós podemos trabalhar onde nós moramos, no local onde habitamos, para colocar esse Sadvipra em prática.
Organization and groups are doing. And start building that network. What P.R. Sarkar called uniting the moralists. So I think everything is available for us to effectively do this. We have to do it.
Está disponível para fazermos isso, para virmos para esse Sadvipra e organizar nós mesmos nos lugares onde habitamos, com paixão
revolutionary spirit
e
to undertake this.
espírito revolucionário. Ele acha que o que ele está dizendo inicia isso.
What is the real goal of this present system of domination of the human race? It seems to go beyond mere hoarding of wealth. It seems full spectrum control is the aim. And what would that serve? What would be a perpetual enslavement of the human race by the few? 1% against 99%? What again on this question?
Perfect question, Dadaji. Really great point. Yeah, it's bewildering, but I think P.R. Sarkar has also given the reply to that in a discourse where he talked about where the mind is dominated by matter.
Agora ele está explicando que a nossa mente deve ser dominada por a gente deve focar a nossa mente no que realmente importa.
A mind dominated by carbonic pabulum. And he said the natural outcome of that is imperialism.
Então, quando focamos nossa mente em algo e quando focamos em melhorar, nós podemos chegar no limite.
Of the American empire, which uses the vehicle of something like 1,000 military bases globally. And some of those military bases are in
Não é
Africa.
como se a gente quisesse atingir o imperialismo, por exemplo, americano, que tem muitas bases militares ao redor do mundo e nos
And I
próprios
think it
países.
does come back to the
Mas
mind that
imperialismo
has
que
dominated itself with matter. It has
ajudaria as
degraded.
outras pessoas. Então,
It's
a gente
combined
deve
with
ter uma
power.
mente que deve ser
And
dominada com foco e poder.
global empire becomes the net result.
E o império global.
We're at a crossroads where either we allow that future to play out, and let's face it, the majority of the world's material resources are controlled by these particular elite groups of people, or we shift that onto a completely different trajectory. I think we actually have the choice here.
Então, ele acha que a gente realmente tem a escolha aqui. Para fazer essa mudança requerida.
Selfless group of fearless moralists that we've been calling Sadvipras. So from this viewpoint, the creation of these people, which is to say the creation of ourselves,
a criação dessas pessoas Sadvipra, de nós mesmos e dos outros como Sadvipras, é uma grande prioridade. E se podemos fazer isso efetivamente, com sinceridade, dedicação e mobilização, então ele acha que a gente teria muita ajuda. E ele acha que a gente abriria para 1% desse desenvolvimento da sociedade humana.
In the chat, I have put the YouTube channel, Amandla African Samaj. You can see the recordings of the previous lectures, classes in the different languages. Also in the chat is the evaluation link where you can evaluate this class, please, so that we can improve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. G.
Então, ele falou aqui no chat, tem um link para o canal do YouTube, para o vídeo esse vídeo, para que possamos assistir de novo se quisermos. E um link para avaliarmos a aula, para que eles possam melhorar.
Okay, well, in our yoga teaching, of course, we have a very developed set of moral principles, and we have been teaching these moral principles for a very long time, and they can be taught, by someone who is sincerely following those points and trying to sincerely making the effort to follow those principles. That person can teach these principles to other people.
Então,
I think it's more than just moral principles to be taught.
Princípios para que possamos ensinar para as outras pessoas também.
It's really a very integrated package today.
E muito além de princípios para ensinar para as outras pessoas.
To some extent, we have that, I think, in our amongst those teaching Prout and those teaching the spiritual practices. Also, however, I'm also of the opinion that society is dynamic, And
E da
new things are
sociedade
always arising, and new ways of doing things better.
e a
And
gente,
that's a challenge for us.
e isso é um desafio para a
How
gente.
to reach,
Estar
a mass of people
com uma
with
grande número de
these
pessoas,
teachings, these trainings
com
that
esses
we have.
ensinamentos que nós temos.
And it's a very different world today than, even
Um
20 years
mundo
ago. It's
muito
a completely different world.
do que
And it's
ano de
changing rapidly.
e está
And we
mudando
have to
muito.
keep pace with that so that we can be effective in our role of sharing these liberating concepts and ideas. But I think largely we know what to teach.
Então,
We have the
nós
challenge
sabemos
now to find what are the most effective
que
means to
nós temos
be
o
able
desafio de
to
achar, ensinar.
broadcast that to a mass of awakening people. That's the key point. There are a mass of awakening people today. And with every abuse of the
Com
oligarchy,
abuso,
of this
oligarquia,
merchant elite, whether locally, nationally, or globally, with
comerciantes,
each abuse, it awakens more
de
people up.
abuso, isso
And that's a
vai
great
acordar
thing.
as pessoas.
Our
Isso é
time is
muito
coming.
boa.
That's what I see very,
Está
very
vindo,
strongly. Our time is coming. And we are going to have
está
to run
vindo.
to keep up
E a
with
gente vai ter que
this
correr
incredible
para
progressive flow that's happening. Thank you.
acompanhar esse desenvolvimento do mundo.
Thank you very much, Dada.
Okay.
And everyone, thank you.
Thank you, Dadaji, and thank you for everyone for joining this evening and supporting. Thank you so much. I hope we can meet again and talk more.